Controlling the aircraft. So we control the aircraft with several different items inside the cockpit. The first and foremost is going to be the control yoke, which is right here. So I'm going to control that. Let's see, let's actually hit the pause key here. Oops, unpause it. So we're at our default situation here, which is on approach at bear, but we're not going to land here. So let's hit P. All right, so what we're going to do here, first time you touch the controls, it may jump around a little bit, especially with the trim there. Just go ahead and adjust your trim until you've got the airplane in a nice level attitude here. So it's now we're nice and level there. Notice that we're not climbing. I'm looking at my vertical speed indicator. That tells us if we're climbing or descending. We're descending a little bit here, so we're just going to trim that up a little bit more. Okay, let's go ahead and I'm going to set my throttle to about 2200 RPM. That's the throttle controls our RPM gauge right here. So if I add more throttle, that's going to increase it. That gives us full throttle right there. You can see that right there. And I'm going to back off the throttle a little bit. We'll just say we want to go to about 2200 RPM right here. Okay. And I want to get that nose down a little bit. Notice in flying, we don't do real exaggerated movements. There's no like sudden movements of the yoke or anything like that. They're all very polished, very smooth movements, very light touches. They're really in a real aircraft, especially like a 172. There's not a lot of pressure you have to put on it to control the aircraft. So you want to practice that when you're using the sim, just light controls and get really good at with the finesse there. Okay, so let's do the first maneuver. The four fundamental maneuvers is straight and level flight. So let's just try that. So we're on a heading of north right now, and I'm looking at my directional gyro or DG right here, directional gyro. That's showing that we're on a heading of north. So we want to stay on that heading right here. We also want to stay roughly at about 1700 feet. So I'm just going to go ahead and let it climb just a tad here. And then I'm going to trim it out so that I don't even have to touch the control yoke. I've done entire flights minus the takeoff and landing in real aircraft using nothing more than the trim and the rudder pedals here. That's all you need to fly an aircraft smoothly, especially when you're at cruise. You don't need to be constantly, moving the yoke around. Okay, so we're pretty much level here. I'll zoom it up just a little bit here. So practice this. This is kind of boring, but straight and level flight is so critical for your learning how to get your learning how to fly and getting your private pilot's license. If you can do this in the sim, you can easily do it in a real aircraft. But the key here is just picking an altitude, whatever one you're at, and staying at that. So for the practical test standards of the ACS Airman Certification Standards, they require that you fly straight and level and not gain or lose more than 300 feet, plus or minus 300 feet. So we're a little low here. I'm going to go ahead and trim it up just a little bit so we can get back to our altitude there. And notice my heading, I've dropped a little bit or moved a little bit to the left of the heading, so I'm going to turn that back. This does take practice. So again, we're on level there. Now we want to just make sure that we stay at that heading, which is north, and our altitude, we want to keep it right there. And again, practice if you can. Use that trim. That saves a lot of time. You don't have to touch the control yoke constantly. So we may have to trim just a little bit. And again, it's just little light touches here and there. What you're looking for is the distance from the horizon right here to the panel right there. You want to keep that about the same once you get set up. You may have to adjust it, may have to decrease that distance there by pulling back a little bit on the yoke or descending on it a little bit there, or pushing the yoke in there. That causes the aircraft to descend. So that's straight and level flight. The other maneuver that you have to do are turns. So if we want to turn to the left, we're going to take the yoke, turn it to the left, and go into a bank. Now, when you go into a turn, what's going to happen is the aircraft is going to slowly start losing altitude. So to compensate for that, what we want to do is pull back on the control yoke. We go into a turn. This is a medium bank turn. About right there is medium bank, and you can just look at our attitude indicator. It's on that little white long line there, and we want to keep it at right about there. And if we start losing altitude, we want to pull back on the control yoke very gently. You don't have to do a lot, but we want to maintain our altitude. So we're going to do this. We're going to actually turn to a heading of south here. So, and when you do that, you can practice this all day long. We're going to precede our heading here, stop our heading at about south there. Notice I started canceling the turn as we were getting close to the heading of south. And here again, we're about 1700 feet, which is our target altitude, and we're at a heading of south. We could do the same thing to the right. We'll go ahead and roll into a turn. I'm just going to apply just a little bit of right rudder here to balance our aircraft out. Uh, Especially when we go to right turns, we're going to need that rudder there. That just counteracts the left turning tendencies here. So here I'm gaining a little bit of altitude, so I'm going to relax the pressure on the control yoke there. Not too much here, so, and I'm going to turn back to a heading of north here, and again, a little bit too steep, and there we go. All right, want to hold it about right there, and we're coming up on north, and so I'm going to level off at north. Now you could practice this with doing 360-degree turns. Overshot it just a little bit there. Okay. And I definitely would recommend practicing your turns. It looks easy. And of course, anybody can turn an aircraft just by turning the control yoke. What really sets the professional pilots away from the amateur pilots are the ones that can hold their heading or choose a heading and then fly to it, but also to maintain your altitude. So if I'm at 1700 feet as we are here on the sim, I'm going to want to make sure that I stay at 1700 feet. And that takes a little bit of practice because if you don't do it enough, you're going to be all over the sky, pulling back and pushing on the control yoke. Again, the big thing that is helpful here is using that trim. Make that trim work for you so that you can cut down on the amount of pressure you have to apply on the yoke there. Okay, so the last two maneuvers, so we've got straight and level flight. That's one. We've got turns, left and right turns. And then our third one is climbs, and then our fourth one is descent. So let's practice a climb. So to do a climb, there's two different ways we can do this. We've got plenty of airspeed right here. So all I have to do to do a climb is I could just pull up on the aircraft. And notice there's a couple things that are going to happen here. We're going to start losing some airspeed here as I pull up. Um, that's because we're trading off, our airspeed for altitude. We're using one of Newton's laws here, so we're converting basically, our airspeed, our kinetic energy for altitude. So we're pulling back on that control yoke there, and we're continuing our climb. You'll see our vertical speed indicator is indicating a climb here. We're also showing a climb on our altimeter here. So another thing you can do if you have a long climb, you could just go ahead and trim your aircraft up so that you don't constantly have to pull back on the control yoke. Notice this right here. There we go. We got that. Now notice our airspeed is getting really slow here, so I'm going to want to add some power here. So that's another way of doing a climb is just adding power. So let's go ahead and let's level off right here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring our power back a little bit, and we're going to push the nose down here. Let's get straight and level here for a second here. So I'm going to demonstrate a climb here. It takes a little while for the aircraft to settle in. That's normal on any aircraft. The more mass you have, the more inertia it's going to have. So it does take a while to stabilize. It's not instantaneous. So here we go. A little off my heading here. So let's go back to a heading of north. All right. All right. Again, I'm just using that trim to kind of trim out, feel the trim pressures there. And I'm actually setting it up. I want to basically be able to fly straight and level, straight, north and level at our altitude right now, which is about 2,200 feet. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim that up. All right. So now if I want to climb, all I have to do is push my throttle in and watch what happens here. So our nose is slowly starting to pitch up. That's another way to do a climb. You don't even have to touch the yoke. The aircraft is just naturally going to climb because you've got excess thrust here. That excess thrust is converted basically into altitude. It's actually climbing up. At some point, the aircraft is going to level off and it's going to stay at the altitude for the power setting that we have here. All right, so that's a climb. So let's talk about descents. That's the fourth maneuver. So we've got straight and level flight. That's one. We've got turns, that's 2, climbs, which we just demonstrated, and now we want to do descents. Descents are really easy. So to do a descent, all you have to do, again, is you could use your power, or you can use your pitch, control yoke here, or a combination of both. So let's just use our power this time. So I'm going to go to my throttle, pull that back, let's bring it back, and notice I'm looking at my RPM gauge right here. I'm going to bring it back to about, let's say about 1800 RPM right here. So I'll just bring it back. And notice that the nose just by itself falls on its own. And that's because there's not enough thrust to keep the aircraft at that altitude. So here we're just descending. If I want to level off, I can go ahead and add some power here. Again, I'm not even pushing on the control yoke here. So let's put it about 2100 here, something like that, 2100 RPM that is. And now we can just level off here. So if I want to go into another descent, I can also push on the yoke. And what will happen here, watch the airspeed as I push on the yoke. I'm not changing the throttle at all, but what's going to happen is our airspeed is going to increase. And when we're coming in for a landing, the last thing we want to do is, come in super fast. We want to be able to come in and control that airspeed. So normally what you're going to do is you're going to reduce your throttle here and lower the nose with that. And again, using the trim to control that. So those are the 4 different flight maneuvers, the fundamental flight maneuvers that all maneuvers are based on. They're going to have some form of that in there. So, okay, very good.